Hey guys, so in today's video we are talking about Dead Island 2. I guess I'll get straight into it because you will have already seen the thumbnail with the massive text that says Mediocre. Now, for those that don't know, I didn't really play Dead Island 1. I played like an hour of it, and even then that was back in like 2000 and something. And I never played Riptide, never had any interest. So when Dead Island 2 was announced, wasn't really kind of on my radar at all. It was kind of more so a suggestion from friends, and me and my partner ended up playing it, and we 100%ed it a couple of weeks back. So I figured, yeah, make a video on it because I've fully done literally everything. I've 100%ed the game. There is literally nothing else. Done all the DLCs, done all the story, done all the side stuff. Literally nothing left in the game that's even remotely interesting to me other than the challenges, which I don't really care about. So I figured, great time to make a video on it because I was finishing it at the time. Just FYI, the gameplay you might see in this video, some may or may not be from DLCs. It's been a while since I recorded the footage, so I don't quite remember. Just letting people know in case they are planning on playing the DLCs. And you know, they haven't seen some bits and bobs. I won't be kind of delving into the DLC story too much. I'm also be talking about the main game story, so spoilers for that. But there will be some gameplay in the video from the DLCs. So if you haven't played them and you want to just avoid completely any spoilers, including like gameplay of it, then there's your warning. Like it's it's going to be on screen, so just click off now, I guess. But yeah, Dead Island 2, going to break it down into a couple of sections. Going to talk about the story a little bit, not super in-depth, because it's been a little while, and also there's just not a lot that I want to talk about in the story. I'm going to talk about the combat a little bit, kind of weapons, things like that, both melee and ranged. Talk about the map, or maps, I guess you could call them, because it's broken up into sections. And then just kind of talk about the side stuff and kind of the game then in a general sense as well. And then at the end then kind of wrap up the achievements a little bit and how I found it overall. So story-wise, Dead Island 2 is essentially LA with a zombie apocalypse again. Much like the first game, except this time we're not really on an island because LA's not an island. But okay, so there's issue number one. It's called Dead Island 2, but we're not even on an island. We're on mainland America in Los Angeles, but okay. They coined the term Hell A instead. And essentially, long story short, you pick one of a bunch of slayers to play as. In my game, I chose to play as Amy. She just kind of, I liked her stats. I liked what her playstyle was. I liked her character as well. She's very much a resilient character. She's a lot about putting others before herself. Also quite interesting because she's an amputee. She's a runner and she's got a prosthetic leg, and I find that really, really interesting. It's kind of nice to have a character who's got a prosthetic, and the one thing that I love about it in the game is at no point does the game make it a big deal. At no point does the game focus the camera on her leg being like, oh no, or does she kind of have a really sad backstory of how she lost her leg. It's never brought up, it's never mentioned, it's never focused on as a focal point. The game is just like, yeah, you can play as someone with a prosthetic leg, and just that's the norm, and I think that's great. I'm not one for like shoving inclusivity in games or anything like that. I'd rather just have devs make fun games, and that's all I really care about. But when it's kind of done this way, where it's not made a big deal of, I think that's really cool because it shouldn't have to be a big deal. The fact that you can just do it and it's the norm, I think is great. But also Amy, again, her playstyle was great for me, and also just her character, personality-wise, I really liked. Again, very resilient, very much, I'm going to make it through anything that gets in my way, and I will do whatever I need to help X, Y, and Z person. Long story short, the entire game obviously revolves around, obviously you get bits, which is kind of a cliche in a lot of zombie media, whether that be films, books, games. So in this case, games. Very much like Dying Light 1 and Dying Light 2, those games also have the exact same cliche where within the first hour or so of gameplay you get bitten by a zombie. Same applies in Dead Island 2, you get bitten by a zombie, and of course, by some pure coincidence, you are immune, because obviously these games wouldn't really work otherwise. Long story short, it turns out that Amy, or whatever character you were playing as in your playthrough, is some kind of special breed of human that the autophage infection, which is the virus in this game story, doesn't affect her in the way it affects a normal person. Instead of breaking her down and turning her into just a zombie, instead she gets some cool abilities and can essentially turn into kind of a feral zombie at will and then change back. It's a little bit weird. I'm not the biggest fan of these kind of stories because Dying Light 2 did a very similar thing as well with Aiden, and I wasn't really a big fan of it there either. You can watch my Dying Light 2 video as well. I'll put that on screen now. It's getting a little bit old, so it might not be as clean as some of the newer videos, but it's there if you want to watch it. But Dying Light 2 did a really similar thing where Aiden also got bits and then also didn't turn conveniently. And also kind of has like better strength, better stamina. He's kind of like an upgraded human because the infection doesn't quite affect him the same it does everyone else where you just turn. And again, you get an ability in that game, I think, if I remember right, 'cause it's been a while, where you can kind of turn feral and just kill things really quickly. I've never been the biggest fan of these kind of zombie stories. I think it takes a lot of the kind of suspense out of them, because you're essentially like, yeah, cool, instead of being punished for getting bitten, I just get superpowers, basically, because I'm really strong now. I'm not the biggest fan, so for me, this is a bit of a turn-off. Didn't really like it. And that kind of leans into the storyline for the rest of the game. You kind of find out about this kind of midway through, and then for the rest of the game, then it's kind of your character coming to grips with, okay, I'm not entirely normal, this is not great, and I need to get cured because I want to be normal again. Game then revolves around trying to find a cure. Obviously you don't find it because that would be too easy. And there's a bunch of stuff that happens along the way. You meet a bunch of characters, from Emma Jaunt to some pilot underground to a woman called Constantine, who's also this kind of special breed of human, except she's got a group of people who all kind of think it's great, and she's trying to get you to join them, and your character's kind of just like, F no, you're all good, thanks. And she constantly kind of shows up in and out, kind of almost trying to show your character what they could be and not what they are. So that's kind of interesting, I guess, but then at the same time it doesn't really go anywhere. Even with the DLCs now that I think about it, it doesn't really go anywhere. So it's kind of okay at best. Like, you wouldn't play, in my opinion, you wouldn't play Dead Island 2 for the story. The story is not what carries the game. It's very much like the first Dying Light, where, you know, the gameplay was pretty solid, but the story itself, if you really focused on it and put it under a microscope, is kind of lacking quite badly. And I have the same issue with Dead Island 2, so I just don't think the story was that good. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of stories where you get bitten and then just by some pure coincidence or miracle, instead of being turned, you become kind of superhuman. Like, I don't like those storylines. I think they're really dumb. And then I just don't like them at all. And then, you know, going after the cure and stuff is kind of like your average cliche. Oh, yes, I need to get cured because this is really bad. It's kind of cliche. It's been done to death at this point. It's nothing new. Now, I thought the DLCs would kind of clear up the confusion about the autophage infection, things like that, in their respective stories, and I played these with my girlfriend Alex. And the first one is House, the second one then is Solar, which is some kind of festival. Those are the only two DLCs for the game. The devs confirmed there would be no more story DLC releasing after Solar. So we obviously thought, okay, cool, like, you know, these will wrap up the story then, right? Right? No, they didn't. They just made everything 10 times more confusing. So in House, you go to some fancy mansion in Miami. You somehow get teleported there, and your main character is actually aware of it. They're like, how did this happen? And the game at no point gives any justification for how you've just magically, like, literally teleported to Miami. Like, the game just does not try at all to explain that. And then it turns out in this mansion there's some AI thing underneath that needs defending from the zombies because it's going to try and rebuild humanity after the apocalypse or whatever. There are 3 people that are kind of dead but not dead, and honestly, I can't really go into it more than that because I didn't understand anything that was going on, and neither did Alex. We both left House and finished the DLC both feeling really confused, kind of disappointed because the DLC, in our opinion, was not that good. The actual playable area was alright, but it was way too confusing. The story was just all over the place. It didn't really answer any questions. If anything, it just gave you more. And it was really weird, just overall. So then we thought, okay, we'll play Solar. That's the last one, so surely this will answer some of our questions, right? But instead of answering any questions, Solar was more so kind of its own self-contained story, where there was some kind of zombie called the Dirge that was using something called the Beat to strengthen itself and its forces, and one of Constantine's people used the Beat thinking it would be a good thing to discover more about the autophage infection and what they were, but in actuality it strengthened the Dirge, who you then have to fight and then put down and then stop the Beat. It was also some weird kind of psychic stuff going on where you were talking to different versions of people through hallucinations or something from other universes. And honestly, I think the devs at this point didn't know what they were doing. Like, it genuinely seems like in the DLCs, the devs didn't know what they wanted to do with their own story, so they started just kind of making up random stuff as they went. So overall, main game story is okay, but you will be left scratching your head. And then if you play the DLCs expecting more answers, you're going to be left even more disappointed, because honestly, the story for both DLCs is kind of below average and just doesn't answer any questions at all. And I'm sure if you go online, there are probably videos of people deep diving into Daylight 2 story, and they'll probably break it down for you, and there probably are answers in there somewhere. Maybe I just didn't catch them, but honestly, in my opinion, the DLC's stories just didn't answer anything, and even the main game story is pretty average as well. So you wouldn't book this game up for the story, let's put it that way. Moving on from the story, what we do have is obviously the gameplay itself, so, open world and combat, things like that. The combat in Daylight 2 is okay. It's good and bad. So the good things are there's a decent variety of weapons, from heavy to headhunter and slashing, things like that. You've got a good kind of stereotypical range, kind of whatever suits your play style. You just play what you want to play, you upgrade them, you fix them, you can match levels. So if you have a weapon you really, really like, you can match the level to yours if you just use money, like in-game credits that you earn by just playing the game, and you upgrade it and things like that. And it's fine, it's a decent system. It's your stereotypical make something fire, make something electric, make something poisonous, that kind of thing. Obviously weapons have tiers: common, uncommon, rare, legendary, etc, etc. Obviously legendary weapons being the best. The first one you will get will be at the end of the game, more than likely, which will be a sledgehammer, which is quite good. Combat's decent. There are some things about it that are kind of disappointing. Now, you've got kind of a parry or dodge system, so you either parry or you dodge. You can pick one. I personally went for parry. The dodge mechanic is alright, but the parry is just, in my opinion, superior in every way, simply because you can learn parry timing really easily, and if you do, then 90% of the time you can get an instant kill on a zombie. And there are also upgrades then that can complement parrying and killing zombies by giving you health back. These are known as kind of perks, essentially. There probably is another word for them, but I can't remember. Essentially, you unlock Slayer cards as you play. You use these to suit your play style, and then pick the ones then that you want to use for abilities and passive abilities as well. So like I said, one of them will be when you counter zombies, you regain a portion of health. That's just an example. There are many of them to get. You get a lot of them by just playing. Some you have to kind of find in the open world, and some I think you generally just find off drops from dead zombies. Good mechanic. I like the perk system. It's interesting because there's a lot of cards to mix and match with, and you can kind of mix up your playstyle kind of on the fly whenever you want, so you can just pause and swap them around. So it's a really good system to kind of just give you a lot to play about with, a lot of different things. There are different abilities that have different effects, so it's really good. I like that part where there's a lot to kind of mix, match, swap things up, so it never feels kind of boring. You've always got something to kind of switch it up and mix and match and make a new combination of your abilities. Now, in regards to the actual combat itself, it's okay, but I'm a little disappointed at times because, like, with slashing weapons, a lot of the time it's just fun to kind of go in and spam it and just slash everywhere and essentially just go nuts on the zombies. Annoyingly, though, a lot of the time you can just get you can get hit mid-animation, and it's a little bit annoying because, like, you can get grabbed and stuff, and, like, that makes sense. I understand that. But what's frustrating is if you're mid-attack and they can, like, hit you and stuff, it kind of spoils it a little bit because all you want to really do is just slash at them. So a lot of the time it ends up being that you have to be more strategic in what you're doing. You have to like kind of not so much single out zombies, but you've kind of got to be keeping an eye on everything all at once. And sometimes it just doesn't feel as fluid all the time, but it's not bad. By no means is it bad. It's a pretty good system. It's pretty satisfying to go for weak points and maim zombies, and the fact you get the big pop-ups on screen being like maimed and things like that makes it really satisfying. Zombies have health bars as well, which is handy. I'm not against this because it is kind of a light RPG kind of game, where you've got the upgrades and things like that. So I'm fine with this, especially for kind of the specialized zombies like crushers and things like that. Having them have a health bar makes life a little bit easier because you know if you're actually doing any damage or not. And obviously then zombies have levels as well. So if a zombie is too high leveled, it has a skull. Usually kills you in about 1 or 2 hits. Not a good idea. Basically means you need to come back later. Which again, I'm fine with. It's kind of a light RPG kind of game. It's not like Skyrim, but it's got some similar elements. So I'm fine with that. Ranged combat is decent. My only gripe really is that you just can't carry enough ammo. You're very limited to the amount of ammo you can carry for each type of weapon, and it's really annoying because like you'll play for like 20 minutes and then you get out of ammo already and you have to go back to a crafting bench to craft more because you can't craft it on the fly. Kind of spoils it a little bit. I get that guns in zombie games are usually like the most overpowered options, so you don't want your players to kind of just only use them all the time, but I feel like the ammo count should be a little bit higher because you really can't carry that many bullets, and it just kind of makes the weapons run out really quickly, which then it kind of begs the question, why bother taking them to begin with? Also, just a quick side note, not being able to craft med kits and ammo on the fly is a really annoying thing. Like other things like upgrading weapons, I can understand, but not being able to craft med kits on the go and having to find a workbench to craft them is one of the most frustrating things with this game because you can only carry a maximum of 5. It's not like Dying Light where you can just craft as many as you want and have them on standby. You can only carry 5. So the minute you're out to 5, if there's not a workbench nearby, good luck because you cannot craft anymore. You have to wait till you get to a workbench. That, in my opinion, was a poor decision. You should be able to craft at least medkits on the fly, and you shouldn't be limited to 5. It shouldn't be a cap, really. You should just be able to craft whatever you need. But that's the gameplay. In regards to the open world, it's okay. I believe the original Dying Light was actually open world, so you just wandered out wherever you want. This game is done into like miniature maps, so like there's an area you can explore, and then there's another area, etc. It's not just one big connected map. There are travel points to get to the different parts of Hell A. It's okay, it works. It can make the game world feel a little bit small sometimes because like the map that you look at looks really big, and then you could run from one side to the other in a couple of minutes, which is kind of sometimes makes it feel a little bit smaller. But on the plus side, it also doesn't make the game feel severely oversized and bloated like other games. For an example, Assassin's Creed Valhalla feels ridiculously big. Dead Island 2 doesn't suffer from that problem. If anything, it's the opposite end of the spectrum where sometimes in certain areas it can feel a little bit small, but overall it's not the end of the world. And then you've got things like side quests. There are a decent amount enough of these. They're alright. They're not that great. They're just something to do. There's not like any cool or really deep stories in here. Usually just something to do. Go here, grab this thing, or go here, kill this thing. Your kind of bog standard side quest stuff. And there's also missing person quests. Again, you just use the clues to find the person. 99.9% of the time they turn into a zombie, when the objective then changes to kill the person, and then you complete the quest. The only other kind of quest you then have is legendary weapon hunting. They're not all legendary. I don't think it's even called legendary weapon hunting. It's something like that. Basically, kind of like missing person, but it's a weapon. Got to find the pieces to essentially unlock the thing that it's in, and then you get a weapon then from that, usually a named one. So it's usually pretty good. Other than that, the only other side stuff really is the challenges. There's just on the pause menu, there's a bunch of challenges to do that all give you like upgrades and things like that. A lot of these are necessary for achievements, a lot of them aren't. So as soon as I did the ones I needed to, I wasn't really interested in the rest, especially because some of them are quite grindy as well. But if you really enjoy the game that much, you've got something to tide you over side stuff wise if you've done all the main game side quests and things like that. Music wise, I'm not obviously really good at kind of talking about music in games because I'm not a composer myself. All I can really say is the soundtrack does its job. You've got some good tracks, specifically the combat ones that kind of make it a vibe. Walking around the open world is kind of more like just chill stuff in the background, but when combat picks up, it's pretty decent. Kind of just gets you kind of a bit more adrenaline and just get going. Other than that, it's not something I would listen to personally. It's not my favourite game music. I've got far better OSTs that I'd rather listen to, but it's not terrible either. It gets the job done, I guess I'd say. So that's the story, the DLCs, quickly mentioned, the gameplay, so combat, open world, and side stuff as well. Other than that, the only other thing I feel like I can really talk about in the video is the achievements themselves. Now, this game, off the top of my head, originally was worth 1,000 gamer score, and then with the DLCs, I want to say it pushed it up to 1,300. Don't quote me on that. I'm doing that off the top of my head by sheer memory, and I'm probably wrong. But it's around about that mark, I think. Now, the achievements in the game aren't terrible. Obviously, there's ones for certain parts in the story, and then there's ones for kill zombies this way. There's one for doing all of the challenges in each kind of tier. So, first thing of every weapon challenge, first thing of every exploration challenge. Not that bad. Some of them are a bit annoying. There are certain specific challenges that are a bit irritating, but nothing a YouTube guide can't fix. Thankfully, there's not an achievement to get every collectible in the game. There's only an achievement to grab 50, and you'll definitely come across 50 in your time playing, so it's not the end of the world. There's one to complete a bunch of side quests. You'll definitely get this just by leveling up. Same with the missing person and lost weapons as well. You're more than likely going to get this done as well. And if you really struggle on the lost weapons, again, nothing a YouTube guide can't fix. DLCs, mostly just story points in the DLCs, got achievements for that, and there's a couple of specific ones, but again, they're not terrible. Honestly, the achievements in the game aren't horrific. It's more so that playing through the game just takes a little bit of time. I do wish the game was worth slightly more gamer score. I feel like some achievements could be worth a little bit more, because I'm noticing a trend in the last couple of years where a lot of games are only worth 1,000 gamer score, and that is not a lot, especially for some games where you pour in hours and hours and hours of playtime just to get 1,000 gamer score when you finally 100% it. For example, a huge offender of this is Red Dead Redemption 2. That game takes about, on average, according to True Achievements, about 250 hours on average to 100%. And the game's only worth 1,000 gamer score, which I think is horrific. It should be worth like 3,000 for the amount of things that you need to do and the amount of time you need to pour into it. Dead Island 2 isn't as big of an offender, but I still think it could have been worth a little bit more. But overall, the achievements aren't terrible. If I had to give it a 10, probably say like a 5, just sheerly for amount of time that it takes to do everything. But overall, is Dead Island 2 a good game? It's not bad. It's not something I would go around screaming to my friends, you need to play this though, either. It's, as the thumbnail says, as the title says, in my personal opinion, Dead Island 2 is just mediocre. It's not a bad game, but it's not a great game. It's kind of just a good thing to kind of chill on, not take too seriously, but it's got competition that kind of makes it look not as good. One of the biggest complaints I really had, especially towards the later time of me and Alex playing it together, was just going around the map. Obviously, when you're playing the story and you're leveling up, you have a reason to fight the zombies because you're trying to level up. But the level cap is 30, which doesn't take that long to get to. And then after that, then you just don't level up anymore at all. So there's no XP earned for killing zombies. So when we hit this point, we noticed that we just were running past all of them. Now, this isn't necessarily an issue, because you do that in Dying Light 1 and 2 as well. You'll run away from them, you'll parkour away from them. But here's where we noticed the problem. It was getting really boring and tedious running back and forth to things, not having anything to kind of do in the interim. And you could argue, Zach, that's the same with Dead Island 1, with Dying Light 1 and 2. You just run between things. But the key difference is that Dying Light 1 and 2 has parkour. Now, I know not every zombie game needs to have parkour, and by no means am I saying Dead Island 2 should have had it. It's fine as it is. I know what the devs wanted to do, and they've made their game, and that's fine. But this is where the Dying Light series gets a massive step up over this game, because the parkour in itself is a fun form of gameplay. So if you are just running around the map, it's fun. But running around Dead Island 2 isn't, because you just run really slowly everywhere and there's not anything actually happening. That was one of my biggest gripes. But other than that, it's just the stuff I've listed in the video. It's not a bad game, and I wouldn't say not to play it, especially if you've got a Game Pass, because you're not losing out on anything. You just download it, and if it's really not to your taste, you just uninstall it. And if you do really enjoy it, then great, it's on Game Pass. Bosh. But it's not something I would go like screaming out over the rooftops to my friends, like, you really, really should play this game. You know, this is a really, really good game, one of the best games of all time. It's just kind of okay. And if okay is your thing, and you like zombie games, and you're looking for one, then yeah, by all means play Dead Island 2. If you're looking for something a bit more fast-paced, with a bit more interesting kind of, you know, movement between the map and stuff, as well as combat, maybe try Dying Light 1/2, because that'll probably be more to your taste. And if you don't really care, then I don't really know why you clicked on the video to begin with. But that'll do me. 25 minutes seems good enough for a video. I don't really have anything else I want to touch on in regards to Dead Island 2. I think I've said all I need to. Could have gone more in depth about the story, but honestly it's been a good couple of weeks since I finished it, and I wasn't that interested to begin with, hence why I haven't gone super in depth. If you really wanted to learn more, then you could always look it up on YouTube, but there's got to be someone that's done like a 4 or 5 hour video on it that's explained literally every single point in the game. I'm just not that person. But if you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like, consider subscribing. I do my best to get a video up every 2 weeks. Don't always manage it because of work, but I do my best. Expect more videos like this. I've got Jedi Survivor lined up, as well as an Assassin's Creed Valhalla video, and I also want to talk about Space Marine 2 as well, and what I think that's going to be like when it comes out. Other than that, I'm going to dip. I've got other videos to record, such as the ones I just mentioned. So I hope you're having a good day/night. Take care of yourself, guys, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care.